Good evening. This is HimanshuBhayani and welcome to the digital news bulletin, the video news bulletin of datelinegujaratnews.com. So what is happening across the world? The world today woke up to a very sad news of earthquake in New Zealand, followed by a tsunami warning. And after that, what has happened is that still the world news, the headlines are dominated by the global jitters of the banking cabal and how the collapse is spreading across with the news of the Credit Suisse. However, the Credit Suisse share prices have recovered after there was a news of Swiss bank getting into it and pumping the money. And shocking news comes from Middle East. 2.5 tons of uranium is missing from the Libyan facility. That is what the UN watchdogs are saying. And the leader of the mercenary group of the mercenary army led by Wagner group of Russia, which has been in news since last 3 days, they have lashed out at Putin and they said that the Russian army is not coming to help them at Bakhmut. What's happening across in US? The Chinese businessman has been arrested in US for conducting an alleged fraud of 1.5 billion rupees. And if you see the Asian subcontinent, what's happening over there? The news is largely dominated by the news from China, and equally the news in African territory is that 30 Boko Haram terrorists have been killed near Chad River between Niger and Nigeria, and some 960 people have been arrested. So that's the news. And the sad news from Europe is that after Antwerp became a diamond trading boss, now Antwerp is becoming a hub of the global cocaine trade, and that's the news across the European media, and it's being spread like a wildfire. So while coming to the Asian subcontinent, what's happening in the Asian subcontinent? Pakistan court bars Imran Khan's arrest till Friday, that is till tomorrow, and almost 1.6 million Afghan refugees have crossed the Central Asia. They have been crossing the Central Asian countries. That's the news. There has been reports of computer breakdown at Hong Kong airport, and that has kind of delayed passenger and flights equally. And a criticism comes from Moscow. Basically, it's disappointed with the liquidation while the treaty between the UK, Germany and France, they take a decision to liquidate the instrument in support of trade exchanges. So kind of embargo, Western embargo again on Russia. That's what it is. This was established in 2019 to facilitate trade between Europe and Iran. So that's now that infrastructure is collapsing. Who is benefiting out of the banking cabal crisis in US? It is, the safe haven currencies. They say that the fear, uncertainty over the bank turmoils have kind of sparked the triggered bullish momentum in the safe haven currencies. That's mainly the Asian currency markets. So that's how it is. And amidst the US banking cabal crisis, what's happening is that the Russian bank has also seen its profits dipping by 67%. So this may be even a part of the consequences of the war. This all headlines or this all news you can click and read on our website datelinegujaratnews.com, where we report the news right from Sydney, which is early 4.5 hours ahead of India, till New York, which is almost late by 9.5 hours after India. So this is the kind of news we report. And what else is happening? The Chinese Coast Guard, they have entered into the disputed water territories of the East China Sea. So that's the news making headlines in the Southeast Asian and Asian media. And what's happening in the Middle East? A tectonic shift is being perceived in Middle East, mainly on the diplomatic front, with the Saudi-Iran relationship. And there are all possibilities that the new investments will be announced by Saudi in Iran. So amidst this, what is the kind of jitters which is being passing between China and US? So China, Iran and Russia, they hold a joint drill in Gulf of Oman. Now that's something which could give jitters to AUKUS and the kind of allies they are looking to counter China impact. And US as well as China, they are battling to influence their weight in Middle East. So that's kind of a news. And amidst this, there is a good news which comes from Sharjah, is that the Sharjah government, the Sharjah ruler has almost kind of declared or approved Emirati dirham, which is 730 million. It's equivalent to 16.45 billion. That's 16.5 billion equals to 1,645 crore rupees to settle the debt of citizens. A ruler is settling a debt of citizens. And archaeologists have discovered worship of unknown gods basically in ancient desert momentum. And on the business front, what's happening is that ASIO from basically from the Israel front has completed its another delivery of thousands of Orion systems. It's a kind of weaponry to the IDF, and that's the Israel Defense Force. And what's happening across, if we see, as we cruise across the mysterious Africa, on the Global Terrorism Index, indigenous people of Biafra, IBOP, has been ranked as one of the 10th deadliest group which is functional over there. And after Cyclone Freddy has killed almost 225 people in Malawi, Malawi is asking basically for a global, it's urging for a global help and urging the world to help out. Of course, Mozambique has reached to rescue the survivors of the Malawi cyclone impact, and Djibouti authorities have deported a kind of international human rights activist, citing security violations, which is something which is being investigated by the authorities over there. And a special envoy for the Horn of Africa affairs of the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, on Tuesday has refuted all the allegations, saying that China is creating a debt trap in Africa. The way China is being alleged for creating debt traps across the world markets, so there were allegations of creating a debt trap in Africa, and they have been, kind of refuting these claims. And what happens in South Africa? South Africa, the leader of economic freedom fighters, that is Julius Malema, has warned law enforcement agencies and officials not to intimidate anyone while they have given a kind of national shutdown to protest in the next week on Monday. And equally, the Santaco, that is the South African National Taxi Council, would not be taking part into that. Otherwise, other labor bodies are going to be participating with this EEF shutdown, the national shutdown. And visa waiver has been announced by Mozambique for 28 nations. And interestingly, on a business front in Nairobi, the coffee trading exchange is all set to go live in the month of April. So that's the news from Africa. While we move ahead in Europe, what's happening? A video footage has been released of the Russian fighter jet crashing into the US drone, and that's making, it's a kind of a splash headlines across the European and the US media, and it's dominating the Western media commentaries more or less. Interestingly, there has been a news that one tree would be chopped, which is 120 years old in London. It would be a kind of sufferer of the legal row over there. Apart from that, what has happened in Russia, one of the train spotters who snapped Putin's armored train was stalked by their agency FSB. Like we have our spy agencies over here, their spy agencies FSB, which was KGB formerly. So they stalked them, and now he has been forced to flee out of Russia. He was basically a fan of Putin. He tried to take some pictures. So be careful while taking pictures of your icons, especially the political leaders. The banking cabal jitter has already spread across the Eurozone, and while the Credit Suisse crisis is brewing, and that's the news mainly in the European media. And apart from that, let's see what's happening in the American soil. Biden goes heavy on the TikTok and reciprocating it, to which China demands US to stop suppressing the TikTok business houses, saying that you should not be so heavy on them. And equally, we had got yesterday a news that Trump media is being investigated for money laundering, for alleged money laundering. There have been reports today in US media about Trump media got millions in loads of foreign sources with Russian ties. It got loads of money from foreign sources who are having Russian ties. So, kuch to gadbad hai bhaiya. Now, what is happening ahead? That the freight train which was carrying some hazardous material, it derailed in western Arizona. And of course, there has been a push for the carbon-free hydrogen, which has accelerated in US. So this is the new economy, and how this will shape, let's see. But equally, what's happening in Canada? The shocking news which comes from Canada is that Canada will deport 700 Indian students who produced fake documents for admission. 700 Indian students. Look at the way people want to migrate to Canada or want to immigrate to Canada, that the students are producing fake documents and they're going to Canada. And what has happened apart from that, Canada will send military aid to Ukraine. Now, with this kind of major things are happening across, we don't know what will really shape up on the NATO front, on the AUKUS front, but this is something which is happening. An official warning of spring breaks in Mexico. They have been a little dangerous for the human health conditions, and one student has already died out of brain bleeding while he was taking a spring break holiday in Mexico. And drug cartels in Mexico, they want a designated status. I mean, most of the people want the drug cartels to be designated as terrorists. And equally, the Mexico has filed appeal in civil lawsuit against the US-based gun manufacturers, the way they are supplying arms to the Mexican drug cartels. So looking at the crackdown on the trafficking of the weapon to the powerful drug cartels. So this is how it is. And what's happening while we cruise across the Caribbean blues, what's happening? Inaugural flight from Inter-Caribbean Airways is making news, which has been welcomed by the St. Kitts tourism body and authority. And Cuba professionals, they have developed their own independent digital platform amidst the kind of sanctions which are there from US on Cuba. Yesterday we saw that a YouTuber, a 24-year-old female YouTuber, she was arrested in Cuba. So I think something is happening on that connect also, that they want to talk to the world as to what's happening in Cuba. And Chinese companies have not engaged into any sort of tax evasion is the kind of version which is coming from the Brazilian authorities. So they say that Chinese companies have been doing business fairly in Brazil. And Argentina has secured almost funds to start exports from a carbon bomb. So this is something making a news. I think you should read this headline and how it is going to shape up. You can go on our website, https datelinegujaratnews.com. It's datelinegujaratnews.com. Okay. And what happens ahead is that Honduras, which wants to cut its links with Taiwan, but Beijing equally is in talks with Panama and are working for a free trade agreement. So kind of China springboard has been activated on the US backyard, mainly in the Caribbean, which is again the tax haven. So let's see what happens over there. And while we, talk of the news from the Pacific Islands and the frozen polars, what's happening in Pacifics? Overworked, overstressed, underpaid, striking teachers made their voice heard. They said 50,000 teachers have gone on the strike saying that we need money for good living. 50,000 teachers on strike in New Zealand. That's the news. Anthony Albanese has answered Paul Keating's blistering attack. He has said that China is different from 90s. So if Paul Keating yesterday made a statement that this will have some dangerous repercussions, as they have said in the headline in the media, Albo says China is different from 90s. So that's how the headlines are reading in Australian media. Is Australian economy on a shaky ground? This is a fantastic podcast and kind of commentary which comes from the SBS Australia. And yes, the ASX collapse. The ASX index has collapsed today, the Australian Stock Exchange Index, and that collapse is largely as the credit fear strikes the Australian investors. And apart from that, what has happened over there? The Scarborough Hotel is up for sale. That belongs to the billionaire Bruce Gordon, and he has said that we want to sell it. So something is happening in the money markets across the world, and let's see how it pans. But these are indications of recession. That is a for sure thing. Massive sweltering heat wave warning in Australia, and amidst that, what's happening is that there has been a good news today. One is that giant eagle Deinatophus gaffer was Australia's big raptor, and they have found the bones, and this eagle used to hunt kangaroos. So it was a giant eagle. And while you make e-bikes at home, while you convert your bikes to e-bikes, your bicycles to e-bikes, be careful, because today there has been an incident where a homemade e-bike has exploded while person was going into the work in Australia. And that's how it is. And equally, what's happening is that there has been arrest in a decade-long investigation in airline workers allegedly helping smuggle drugs. And this arrest has happened in Sydney. The New Zealand, the nation's economy has shrunk by 60 basis points in quarter 4 of 2022. That's the news across the Australian media. And New Zealand yet has supported Fiji with a $10 million plan to support a climate adaptation. So this is largely what is happening. And interestingly, what's happening in polars, on the frozen polars, though the temperature might be low, but the news is high. The temperament for the news is high. If you love penguins, Antarctica has a task for you. They are looking for a manpower because they have to count the penguins again. This time it starts and they need manpower for that. That's the news over there. And Canada has announced almost 1 million funding for Arctics. I mean, for basically the Arctic's wellness, and they've announced this fund to one foundation in Arctics. And the major oil project which has been announced by Joe Biden, which is the ConocoPhillips Willow oil project on the North Alaskan slope, is not seen in a good light. And it seems it has intensified the Alaskan natives' rift and their life. And the same project is also seen as a carbon bomb in Arctics, and it has been challenged legally, and it faces multiple lawsuits. Even the approval faces the multiple lawsuits. So that's the news basically, right from Sydney till New York, across Europe, London, Africa, Asia, the Asian subcontinent, Middle East, everywhere. And do keep on logging to our website, datelinegujaratnews.com. Click on the links, read the news. Wherever you have the bulleted points, just cut paste them, search it onto the search bar, and try to get the view as to what is happening in the world. These are trial shots. We'll keep on continuing we'll kind of try to improve continuously with your feedback. And yes, we'll be more entering into the editing mode, so we can show you the graphics, the visuals wherever it is possible, and we'll try to do that. Thank you for listening to us, viewing us patiently, and good night.